So now that Total War Warhammer 2 has been out for a couple weeks now, I want to start getting us, I guess, a little hyped up or a little bit lore savvy on one of the DLCs that we know is coming for Tomb Kings. They have or for Total War Warhammer 2, Tomb Kings, Tomb Kings. They have actually confirmed that they are coming in Total War Warhammer 2. We don't know exactly when. It'd be a really cool kind of like end of October release, but I think that we're definitely going to get Mortal Empires before that, and I think that Tomb Kings are a little bit further down the line. So what I want to do here is start on a new series of videos that are basically just going to be the legendary lords of the Tomb Kings. We will do one of those grand overall videos on all of the units of the Tomb Kings because they have a lot of great stuff. They've got these Ushabtis, they've got these basically these knights on top of these giant undead cobras. They've got catapults, they've got chariots, they've got everything. They're very Egyptian themed, and that's kind of the crux of the whole army. And they have a bunch of special rules. They have their own lore. So the Tomb Kings have a lot going for them. They're very challenging. From those of you that played them in tabletop, you would know that they're one of the lowest as far as power tier goes. Like people, I mean, when you went to a competition, Tomb Kings were there, but that guy usually knew what he was doing when he played Tomb Kings. It's not something you picked up as a first army. They're a very challenging army because it relies on flanking, it relies on using your special characters. It's very similar to Vampire Counts without having the forgiveness of Vampire Counts. Vampire Counts have the benefit of having ghouls, Graveguard, their Blood Knights. You don't really get that with Tomb Kings. Tomb Kings, you get a lot of just kind of skeleton run-of-the-mill infantry with a lot of other special characters inside of, or I'm sorry, special units outside of that, but they're all pretty much skeleton based. But they do have little things here and there, and we'll go into that into the wider lore video. But today I want to get into one legendary lord. We'll start the series off with one of them, and I'll have a nice convenient playlist for all these once they all come out, so that way you guys can see if you want to listen to them all at once. But we're going to start with probably one of my favorite lords, or lordesses, or ladies, whatever, High Queen Khalida. She's the beloved of Asaph. And I'm going to do the typical kind of fare here, read through the little lore blurb. We're going to go in through her special rules, maybe talk a little bit about what we would see her looking like in a campaign perspective for the Tomb Kings, and as well talk about maybe some of her items and how they would kind of come into the game. So, Khalida Neferar, the warrior queen of Liberis, was highly respected across all the lands of Nehekhara. Her intelligence and bravery were as legendary as her intense sense of honor and justice. Her reign was tragically short as she was cut down in her prime, and all of Nehekhara mourned her passing. Talita was killed by her cousin Neferata, queen of Lamia, in ritual combat during a great celebratory feast. Neferata desired the death of Khalida, for the warrior queen had been growing ever more suspicious of her cousin. Khalida was right to be wary, for Neferata had attempted to recreate the elixir of life, and in doing so, had become the first of the vampires. If Khalida was not silenced, then the Lamian's dark secret would be discovered. So it was that Neferata falsely accused Khalida of treason, and the warrior queen rose to personally defend her honor. The two women fought before the shocked nobility, their blades weaving a delicate and deadly dance. Khalida was a skilled warrior, yet she could not match Neferata's preternatural speed or unholy strength, and was struck a mortal blow. As Khalida lay dying, Neferata bit hard on her own tongue and placed her mouth over the lips of her cousin, letting vampiric blood flow down the warrior queen's throat. As the life began to leave her body, Khalida knew that cursed blood now flowed through her veins. In desperation, she cried out to the gods to save her from the same fate that had taken hold of Neferata. Asaph, the asp goddess, heard her pleas and purified the vampiric taint from Khalida's veins, though it drained the remaining life from her as well. In sorrow, she was borne back to her home city of Liberis. Khalida was embalmed and placed in a seated position within a specially made reliquary. There she sits unmoving, her face concealed behind a beautiful death mask created in her likeness. In times of need, Khalida awakens, and the power of Asaph infuses her mummified remains. Her flesh returns to its former beauty, gradually becoming as pale and as hard as pristine white marble. Gracefully, she rises from her throne and glides across the temple floor, commanding the tall, heavy doors to open with a delicate motion of her hand. Her famed archer legions, buried in vast tombs beside her, rise at her bidding, marching alongside their immortal warrior queen as they did in life, bringing death to those that intrude upon her realm. High Queen Khalida is the embodiment of the Asp goddess, and divine energy flows through her limbs. Venom runs in Khalida's veins, and she moves with the speed of a striking asp. Only when all of her foes lay dead at her feet does she lead her legions back to Liberus and sit upon her throne again. However, though Khalida sleeps, her soul is troubled. Deep within the High Queen burns a loathing for those tainted by Nagash's vile sorcery, and only when the last vampire has been slain will she finally rest in peace. So, we have a lot of mention of Neferata, of Nehekara, of the Lamia, so we've talked about these a little bit in some of the very earlier lore videos about the origins of the vampires and the vampire wars and everything like that. So we're seeing now Khalida, who directly plays somewhat of a hand in the history of vampires, as removed as it could be, kind of coming to life in this lady, this lord. It's kind of hard to call him a lord when it's a lady, legendary lady. But she has a number of special rules here, and these rules don't always. I mean, obviously, a lot of them are not going to make the translation, but she's got always strike first. Hatred vampire counts, meaning that she gets a lot of bonuses when fighting vampire counts, and we'll go into that in just a second. Nehekaran undead, which is important because in the tabletop they made a distinction between vampire count undead and Nehekaran undead, or the Tomb King undead, because the spells affect one or the other. It wasn't until the end times when they just kind of wrapped them all under Undead Legion where they just were to have the special rule undead. So while it is important to denote that from a tabletop perspective, I'm not sure if we'll be really actually seeing that from a game perspective. I don't know if they'll say like, hey, these abilities, like maybe Invocation of Heck, won't actually affect Tomb Kings. So we can have a vampire count Tomb King fight, and it won't actually, they'll have the actual special rule in the Nehekar and Undead, and maybe, because there is the whole lore of Khemri, or lore of the Tomb Kings, that is only pertains to the Nehekar and Undead. So I'd love to see if Creative Assembly does that to kind of A, keep a balance, and B, kind of make it so that you have distinction between the two lores. You don't want to, although it doesn't seem very much like, or it's not very much like the lore of vampires, you don't want that lumped in together because they're mortal enemies, and we'll get into the lore behind that when we go into the lore behind the army as a whole. But again, so she has got the Nehekar and Undead special ability, or special rule, as well as poisoned attacks. So she also has flammable. So she's and a lot of the army has flammable, so they're highly susceptible to fire attacks. And we've seen that a lot already. A lot of vampire counts and a lot of their units are susceptible to flaming attacks. So it fits that motif of undead, kind of the crux of them being, you know, a well-lit torch. But she also has this ability called the Curse. And the way the Curse works is anytime she's killed in close combat in the tabletop, it actually does a damage to the person or the unit or the challenger that kills her. So I would love to see that incorporated in this game, because a lot of the strength of the Tomb Kings relies on their special characters, and a lot of their special characters have this curse ability. Even a very few scant amount of their actual units have curse, I believe. I can't remember 100%, but basically curse is a way to make their already kind of papery unit profile a little bit more stalwart, because you kind of have to pick and choose who goes against what, because it's a pretty substantial hit to the character, so you do have to kind of be wary of that. So it makes it so you have to be a little more calculated in your attacks against Tomb Kings, and it's also a bit of a trick up your sleeve, because in tabletop, if someone forgets a special rule and you move on with it, there's no retrospect in there. There's no like, hold please, mulligan, we'll roll again. But I'd love to see if they put a curse in there, like maybe one last, maybe it does like a overcasted soul leech on someone if you kill them. Like that'd be really cool to see that. But she also has incarnation of the Asp goddess, and so the power of the Asp goddess flows in Khalida's veins. Poison attacks cannot wound Khalida. So I'd love to see that too, an immunity to poison attacks, because we've seen a lot of poison attacks coming with Lizardmen, and we've seen a lot coming with Skaven. Obviously not so much with the High Elves, but we do still have some with the Dark Elves, right? The Witches and the Assassins, they do these are poisons, or what I would at least consider a poison with the Witch Elves. And I'd love to see that having an immunity for High Queen Khalida, so you can't just, you know, blitz her with some Witch Elves. She goes rampage mode and you can't control her for a little bit. She also has Blessing of Asaph The Asp Goddess smiles on Khalida and her followers. Any unit of skeleton archers joined by the High Queen of Khalida use, basically, to kind of segue this, because you don't really know what this means if you don't know the tabletop, it says uses her unmodified ballistic skill in place of her own. So basically, her ability to fire, her missile attack, would be used for any of the archers in her unit. So what I could see this being is actually either a increase to reload speed or increase to missile damage, something that it confers a bonus to archers, making her a very archer-centric lord. And we could even see that as far as like an actual campaign mechanic, maybe she confers a -% to upkeep or to recruitment of the same of said archer lords, and maybe an increase to maybe the weapon damage of them as well. But one thing though, I'd like to see here with that hatred vampire counts. I'd love for her whole army to have maybe a skill at the very top that has that hatred, like, you know, undying hatred or whatever, the kind of cool, like, melodramatic term they want to call it, like, fucking I hate pointy fangs, but like a 10% weapon damage buff for the entire army or something like that. And we've seen a lot of that with a lot of the other units, like High Elves get it with their Dark Elf kin, Dark Elves get it with the High Elf kin, some Greenskins get it. I mean, there's a bunch of different variations that already in the game, so it would fit into what we've already seen, and I'd love to see that kind of take place as well. She does have one magic item though, and that's the Venom Staff. Khalida wields a staff shaped like a striking asp that writhes as if alive and spits at its enemies with the anger and spite of SF herself. I also one time pet a llama. It spit right in my eye. I thought I was going to go blind. I freaked out. But that's neither here nor there. So basically what it does is it gives her a bound spell, which is just simply a magic missile. But I mean, we've seen actually a lot more bound spells in Total War Warhammer 2, right? With the Ring of Cain, the Ring of Cain from Teclis. So it basically gives him Fiery Convocation. So it wouldn't really surprise me, but maybe it would also give her some sort of bonus to some other aspects around her, because she's not a caster. Even though she's got this Venom Staff, she would have poison attacks on her profile, so maybe it would incur like poison attacks in a radius or something like that. I'd love to see it have some sort of thematic bonus, because sometimes they've taken things and kind of kept true to the overall lore of them, and morphed them a little bit. Like Sunfang in the tabletop isn't like a breath attack that you can just drop wherever you want. It's a breath attack that has to come from a cone from Tyrion. So I'd love to see them do something with the Venom Staff that kind of keeps it in place here. A magic missile I feel is maybe a little too underwhelming. Magic missiles are more potent in the tabletop, not as much in this game. But that kind of concludes High Queen Khalida here. Let me know what you guys think of this. I'd love to keep doing this for the rest of the Legendary Lords as just a kind of a way to step into the lore of the Tomb Kings. They've got a lot of lore. They play a really heavy hand in the early formation of the Badlands of the Old World. I mean, before you really have Sigmar and everything like that, you've got Khemri, you've got Nehekara, you've got undead Tomb Kings, basically, because they become undead throughout the lore and all. And with Nagash and everything, Nagash is actually a Khemrian priest. He's not just this bone daddy who comes out of nowhere and is like, I'm gonna make some spooky ghosts everywhere. But I'd love to go into more of these lords here. Of course, we'll go into the big ones like Cetra and all that, and Ark in the Black. I mean, we shan't forget them. But I just want to start in on one that I think makes an easy parallel from stuff we've already heard about, and a good transition into the rest of the lords here. But do let me know if there's any other things you want to hear about. We'll go over the Tomb King's gods as well. We'll go over their lore of magic and all their units. Don't worry about that. We'll touch all those. We'll do the same treatment with the Ogre Kingdoms as well. You guys know that's coming down the pipe too. But thanks for watching here today, guys. Have a good one. Take care, and do let me know if you want to hear about anything else.